Check it out, you got me mesmerized with your black hair and your fat ass eyes. Street poetry is my everyday, but yo, I gotta stop when you try my way. If I was working at the club, you would not pay. Hey yo, your man Rich Crony, he got something to say. I just wanna deal with you. What I gotta do to make it real with you? And I'm looking for a sign. Let me lay this on the line. Baby, call me on the phone. You just call me when you call me, and I promise that it won't be long. Let me take you for a ride. You just call me when you call me, and I know it's gonna be alright. It's gonna be alright. Alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Stretch out your legs, let me make you ball. Drive you insane, drive you up a wall. Staring at your dome piece, very strong. Stronger than pride, stronger than Teflon. Take you on the Ave and you buy me links. Now I wanna push, cause I'm on the brink. I just wanna deal with you. What I gotta do to make it real with you? And I'm looking for a sign. Let me lay this on the line. Baby, call me on the phone. You just call me when you call me, and I promise.
Wow, we're way too close to people.
I'm like a buffer, right?
Like a little more buffer. And we're usually a little bit wider too, I think, so something's different.
Well, it's a different table.
Oh, it is?
We're further back usually.
Yeah, we're way too close, we're way too close to the masses. Oh, good luck. All right, I'm wearing different glasses then. No.
Mine was BG brand. Whatever.
I'm going
I
to
go through them so fast, I just gotta buy like 4 at a time.
Okay, I'll go with real ones. Okay. They're not gonna be twins. It's because your beard grows in, mine isn't. I'm working at it though, I'm trying. So it's funny, I said to my wife, okay, honey, time to shave it off. She said, no.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the meeting of the Board of Selectmen for November 27, 2018. Previous to the meeting, the board met in executive session to approve executive session minutes, consider litigation strategy with respect to the petition of Eversource Energy, to consider the purchase, sale, or lease or value of real property. In that discussion in an open session will have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the board. So now we will open the main session of the Board of Selectmen, and we'll start as usual with a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And first on the agenda is our public forum. Are there any residents who would like to offer comments this evening? Jean.
Hi, Jean.
This feels familiar. How are you? I am Jean Birchman. I'm just here to share some good news on Giving Tuesday. I'm here on behalf of Ann Matina, who's teaching tonight. But I wanted to, I'm sure all of you are aware that she has started an effort this year called Hopkinton Gives. And what she did was reach out to a number of nonprofits in Hopkinton and create a common website where all of them have linked their donation pages and their logos, links to their website, so people can go to one central location and see all of the many, many organizations in Hopkinton that do such great volunteer work for our community. So today is Giving Tuesday, and that was the big push, was for everybody to be sharing this common website and learning not donating just to their own favorite organization, but learning more about other organizations in the town. And so there are still a few hours left in Giving Tuesday, and I wanted to take this opportunity to share with you what she's done and invite you, if you haven't already, to share that with your friends, or as long as your meeting adjourns before midnight, you can still participate when you get home. So really that's all. I'm just here on her behalf. She has 22 organizations signed up this year, which is fantastic. And she started on behalf of the Hopkinton Historical Society, and they already have surpassed their Giving Tuesday total. As of this morning, they had done that already. So hopefully everybody else is having a similar level of success. And that's it. Just wanted to share the good news.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah,
Thanks, Jean.
the Giving Tuesday Hopkinton Gives site is a wonderful idea. It was up prominently on Hop News, and just this one-stop shopping idea. I know I went on to it and ended up making, a couple contributions to organizations I would not have necessarily thought of, because they were all displayed together in that one spot. It was like, while I was at it, oh, I'll do this and I'll do that. So the idea of that sort of one-stop shopping really does work. It's a great idea. So Annie, when you get a chance, big thanks to you for doing that for Hopkinton. Is there anybody else?
You want to wait for marathon things until that later? Okay.
That's later in the agenda. Okay, well, hearing none, I do want to first say a big thanks to HCAM for, again, accommodating us on such short notice in the event of the emergency that occurred today at Town Hall. They are always there through flood and all kinds of disasters. They step up to the plate to help us get through with wonderful facilities and wonderful amenities. And so thank you, HCAM. And on that subject, Mr. Kamalo will give us an update on the situation with Town Hall, and I believe we have a number of our municipal officials here to answer questions if needed. Mr. Kamalo, tell us the bad news and the good news.
It's always good news.
Started out as bad news, getting better.
Yeah, through the chair, I want to share with the public that the Hopkinton Town Hall and Public Library remain closed at this time. This is due to an electrical problem that occurred this morning. In summary, a short in the power service lines from the utility pole right in front of Town Hall resulted in a surge of power and eventual loss of power within the building. This in turn resulted in the loss of municipal internet and some municipal phone lines, including non-emergency business lines at the police department, DPW, library, and senior center. I need to really emphasize this. At no time was the 911 network down, and public safety response remained at full capacity throughout the day. Here's what is happening tomorrow. We have identified key town departments that will operate from the Hopkinton Public Library beginning at 10:30 a.m. This includes the town manager's office, the town clerk's office, the finance department, land use department, including Board of Health. We are asking individuals from this department to perform primary routine business transactions and answer any questions from the public. In terms of the repair work at Town Hall, I am at least pleased to report the following. The response team by our public safety officials, inspectional teams, and Eversource this morning was timely, professional, and on point. We quickly identified the issue and immediately, based on the information that we had gathered preliminarily, assembled the Hopkinton Emergency Management Group. And in those discussions, we came up with a response plan. And as part of that response plan, we have acted on several issues that at least allow us to, as I said, have some of our offices operating from the library beginning tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. And at this point, I want to share and actually commend Deputy Chief Bill Miller, Chuck Hardlick, the building inspector, the police chief, Chief Lee, Josh Grossetti, the IT director, as well as Dave Del Torio. They have been on point, they have been forecast, they spent the whole day making sure that everybody did their part, and also the relationships that they have built with the utility companies and the contractors that work with the town actually enabled us to respond timely to this issue. It also goes without saying that the continued investment by the community in town hall infrastructure put us in a position where we immediately mitigated the impact of the damage. And most spectacularly, also allowed us to start planning going forward. And at this point, I'll let the board ask any questions that you may have.
I'll just have one question. Did this incident, was it related at all to the storm that came in the night before with the water and the winds, or it was totally unrelated?
At this point, we believe it was totally unrelated. Yeah. It was between the pole that's directly in front of the town hall and the underground wiring that goes into the town hall. So it was the underground cable that was affected that shorted out.
Okay, so it wasn't like we've had water penetration issues historically in the basement of town hall and all that, wasn't it? So just, correct. Thank you. Other questions from board members?
I think that was a pretty copious explanation by Mr. Kamalu. Pretty thorough as always, and it's just nice to see. You always know that you see the police and fire there that are always ready to go, DPW, but it's nice to see all the departments in town mobilize and work together to kind of overcome whatever hurdles come about. So tip of the hat to Mr. Cadlick, Mr. Miller, Mr. Kamalu, Mr. Lee. Anyone else? Chief Lee, sorry. Mr.
Best guess as to when we'll be back up and running?
So, as of 6:15 tonight, we are actually operating on generator power. So we have heat back in the building. We have our internet for the town-wide back up and running. Josh is working on that as we speak. We've been running it off of our rescue for the last 5 or 6 hours. We've switched over now to the generator. The electrical company had just finished pulling the cables, the new cables, to replace the ones that had shorted out. So we're looking sometime tomorrow to have power, street power, restored back to the building. And then Chuck and I, with Ed Hicks, are gonna be going room by room to make sure nothing was done, because we don't know the electrical service or anything that may have happened with the spike into the building.
So hopefully, maybe Thursday, back in.
Yes. Yes, that's our projection.
Did the main breaker trip?
It did not, Brian, no.
Did it blow?
It blew the ground out of the basement and shorted out into the basement.
It blew the ground, you know, there's an 8-inch water main coming in steel,
Yeah.
so the building is all, everything's grounded to that. It blew the ground, right off the 8-inch main, so it was a pretty good surge.
How old's that main, we know?
It's actually not that
breaker.
old.
No, that part of that was
fairly-
replaced from the water main leak, or water leak we had.
Who did the electrical work?
The, pulling the new cables,
No, who put that new main breaker in during the water
Flood,
building
after the flood.
rehab?
Well, none of that,
No,
none
none
of
of that
that
was
was
touched.
replaced.
nope,
Oh, that was not touched?
that was not touched, no.
Okay.
Nope.
That main should have tripped, so something's wrong there.
That's
Yeah.
why we're not gonna be turning everything back on in one shot tonight. We're
There was,
gonna take our
there was a
time.
surge through the building, and in the Board of Health, in the next room, there's an electrical panel that was actually
Vibrating.
humming and vibrating. As in the wall in the planning director's office, there was the same thing, just noises in the wall. And then the lights went out, half the lights went out.
So I'm in the electric business, forgive me, one last question. So is that 480 volt coming in, or is it 240?
440, right? Yeah,
It's
isn't it?
208.
208, well,
So-
yeah, it's
Yeah,
208, so
right.
440,
Okay.
Yep.
So it's not dry types, it's something else.
yeah.
So,
Anyone else that here? Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Excellent, thank you.
Great, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Mr. Kamalo.
Thank you.
Let's hope this is the last of our town hall disasters for a while.
Threes.
Yeah.
Number 2, company threes.
Actually, I do have one question for Mr. Kamalo.
Mr. Nasrullah, yes, please.
As far as conducting town business, getting permits and things, is the building, I mean, where should the public go?
Yeah, beginning tomorrow at 11 a.m., the public can go to the Hopkinton Public Library.
Okay.
Yes. Again, we'll be conducting minimal services. Anybody with questions or basic inquiries can still contact town staff through our town email.
So will that be up on the website, all those offices and where they're gonna be located tomorrow?
Yes, as we're speaking, I'm sure Josh is getting ready to send out a message.
Maybe get that to Hop News too.
Yeah.
Had a whole thing up on it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, good. Well, we now come to our volunteer recognition, and this evening, thanks to Bob Levinson's wonderful program that he initiated, we have a host of wonderful volunteers to recognize, and the fact that there are so many of them does not diminish at all the quality and the importance of each of their contributions. There are a group that have been part of the Sharon Timlin organization, but first I think I will mention two individuals. Is Heather Smith here tonight? Okay, is Alec Levine here tonight? Well, we have a nomination and an award for Heather Smith, who was nominated by Jennifer Andrews. So I'll set this aside and it'll be available in the Board of Selectmen's office for Heather when she wants to pick it up. And Alec Levine was nominated by Ann Marcy. Ann, I see you here. Do you want to just say a word about Alec and why you nominated him?
on his way.
Oh, he's on his
No,
way.
no, the wrong one. Wrong message.
No. We can,
They thought it was Thursday now.
Oh. Well, speak up for Alec for just a quick minute. Just,
Okay, they thought it was Thursday night, I guess.
no, selectmen always meet on Tuesday.
Well, Alec has really
Gotta come up to the
volunteered.
mic.
Come up to the mic, real quick. Just tell us about Alec and tell him
Well, I
that we
talk
will,
loud enough so everybody can hear me.
yeah, this will be available in the office for him.
Alec volunteers for a lot, you know, and he does Special Olympics. He was one of the originators of the Hopkinton Youth Basketball Program many years ago. And one of the big things that he does is he works with Parkinson's patients and boxing to help with their balance, I guess. But he does it, well, maybe 3 days a week. He does it in Northborough and he does it in Holliston, I believe. And so it's really helped these people. So I just feel that Alec has done a lot and deserves recognition.
And is he a student or is he an adult?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's
No,
been.
You don't know
I
Alec?
don't know
Oh,
Alec.
my
No, I
gosh.
don't.
Awesome.
He's been the director of the Special Olympics, Hopkins Special
Okay.
Olympics.
Okay.
I'm gonna say probably 15 years, as long as I've been doing it, so
Oh.
it's probably 15 years.
Well,
Yeah.
my apologies for not knowing him, but I'm so glad you nominated him, and that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
So, congratulations and
Well, I'm
thank
sorry
you,
he's not
Alec.
here.
We're sorry we had the mix-up, but please tell him to come to the Board of Selectmen's office and
I will.
we'll get
I
this
will.
to him. Thank you, thank you.
Thank
and
you.
Good,
Thanks,
good
Bob.
choice, good choice. And, Bob, maybe you can speak to this next group. I think there's about 26 here, and as I understand, they've all been part of the Sharon Timlin group, and you told me earlier that Dr. Brown, who's part of the Timlin organization, is here tonight too. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the organization, what these people have done?
Okay, thank you. And just with Heather and Alec, and as a nominator, it reflects the breadth and the depth of volunteering that happens across the town. Really represents the spirit of Hopkinton, so I'm thrilled to be able to do this tonight back in front of you, representing Chief Flannery, Jean Birchman, and Dottie Ferreter-Wallace from the Volunteer Recognition Committee. And yeah, it is my privilege to talk about the Sharon Timlin Road Race. I'll read a little bit here before I read off all the names. And I'll just read my nomination, and Chief Flannery, we decided to put the names in. For the past 15 years, excuse me, close to 2,000 runners have towed the start line on the Loop Road to run the Sharon Timlin Memorial 5K Run to Cure ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. This is a horrific and currently incurable progressive neuromuscular disease that robs its victims of the use of their muscles. And if anybody's seen it up close, you understand why people like those on the committee have such passion for it. It's awful to watch. Unfortunately, I've seen it up close, and a number of people on the committee have too. So you can see where the energy and the dedication, the passion come from for everybody who's involved in ALS research and raising money. This is a 100% volunteer committee that oversees the race and Family Fun Day and has raised close to $2 million since the race began. The committee is extremely dedicated, putting in countless hours raising money and managing a multitude of details to ensure a great day for all, runners and their families, emphasizing the family day as well. It's a massive undertaking, and it's handled with great care and devotion. The Timlin Race is now an eagerly anticipated event in Hopkinton. It's very popular in the running community and has become the second most well-known race that starts in Hopkinton.
What's the other one?
I think it's on the agenda later, I'm not sure though. The committee has very low operating costs, and all members are very committed to the effort of raising awareness and raising money to cure this horrific disease. So I'm thrilled to be able to do this tonight along with Chief Flannery and the committee. And I'm also thrilled to have Dr. Brown here, who changed his schedule because he felt so strongly about the committee led by Abby and her great team, and he said he wanted to be here to say a few words. And Dr. Brown leads the neurology lab at UMass Medical Center, and his lab is a direct beneficiary of the funds that are raised by the race. So if I can call up Dr. Brown.
please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brown, for coming tonight.
Thank you. This is an honor. As you've heard and as you know, ALS is a devastating disorder that takes individuals from vigorous good health to death from respiratory paralysis, typically in 3 or 4 or 5 years. It is called an orphan disease, and we struggle with that because sometimes that makes fundraising difficult. But the reality of the statistics is that more than 500,000 Americans now alive today will die from ALS. And I would submit that is not an orphan disease at all. The problem is, and you've just heard it said, we have no good therapy for ALS. And Abby Rosenberg has just had an enormous impact on trying to change that. Through the work she has done, through the work of her extraordinary committee, the Timlin family, and if I may say, the town of Hopkinton, in this race that they have run so successfully. Upwards of $2 million have been raised, and that has all gone toward trying to discover innovative new ways to understand and treat ALS. Only this year, 2 new types of therapies have been tried, turning off ALS genes as one example of how powerful her fundraising has been. So on behalf of all of us in the laboratory and 20 odd labs that work on this disease, on behalf of all the patients we see in the clinic and their families, I want to say from the bottom of my heart how much we appreciate what Abby has done, what the committee has done, the Timlin family, and the remarkable people of Hopkinton who've made this so successful. Thank you, Abby.
Just have a little bit more to say. And again, if you've been to the race, and I think all of you have, you know the feel of the day. It's just a marvelous day. There's this undercurrent of sadness because of why you're there, but what they've done to make that a fabulous day is just should be recognized. I had a few more words to read from a person who's involved in the race as well, Mike Timlin, former pitcher for the Boston Red Sox, who wanted to have some words spoken tonight. He said, "Thanks for letting me speak without being there. Let me start by saying that this group of volunteers are truly amazing. Never in my life have me and my family been so blessed by a group that shares our heart as much as they do. We came up with the idea of having a run to honor my mother, and this group, led by Abby, took off with it. It's hard to put into words how Dawn and I feel about all the volunteers throughout the years we've been involved with doing this run." I should have told them not to do this. I'm going to be trying to get through this. God has truly blessed the Angel Fund with the likes of these people, and they continue to do this from the goodness of their heart, along with their own personal story being touched by this terrible disease. Thank you all for what you have done for me, my family, and the Angel Fund. We love you guys. Congratulations on this recognition. A day later, I got another message from Mike. He said, and I'm quoting verbatim, "Can you also mention about Abby and Rich? What an amazing job they have done raising 2 boys that have hearts for others by raising funds to support this run. They are great parents and great examples of how you should live life." Just, great opportunity to say thanks to all these folks. Now, I will read all the names. I know they're not here, but I have a few key folks, and I'll read the names of Abby Rosenberg, Dave Kruger, April Galenik, Stephanie Whalen, Kathy Eunice, Don Mercier, Lauren Mercier, Gail Welsh, Colleen Allen, Courtney Pinto, Kieran Tumbledon, Michelle Kinsella, Cara Dion, Tracy Logan, Diane Koshef, Marie Marchetti, Diane Bird, Mark Saloy, Elaine Alden, Lisa Stevenson, Maureen Tumbledon, Betsy Kruger, Ellen McAuliffe, I'm sure I'm butchering some names, Ali Baster, Patrick Welsh, and Sue Hadley. Give you a sense of this, what a logistical issue this is to run this, and all these people do it with smiles on their faces. So just glad to do this, and who's ever on that list who wants to come up and we can pass these out, it'd be great.
Thank you, that's wonderful. And Dr. Brown, for you taking your time out of your schedule to come all the way, that really speaks volumes about this organization.
Thank you.
It really does.
Here's our
So,
representatives here from
I think Abby is here, is she not?
Abby's right here.
Abby Rosenberg. We've got all these wonderful certificates, and I think the ones for those who are not here, we'll keep them in the selectman's office for them to be picked up. But Abby?
Thank you so much.
Abby Rosenberg, thank you. You are the heart and soul of this organization.
It's truly a group effort, and a group effort both for the committee and UMass and the Timlin family and the town, the Board of Selectmen and the schools and all volunteers, 200 plus volunteers that show up every day, and every day. It feels like every day. Not really, and we've had new people come back for 16 years, and some that have just joined us this year, so, yeah, thank you.
Thank
Good job,
you.
Thank
You
you.
are a legend. We'd also like to recognize and say thank you to David Kruger. David's not here. To April Galenik.
Nope.
Stephanie Whalen.
Yep.
Stephanie's here. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you very much.
Well deserved. Kathy Eunice. Don Mercier. Lauren Mercier. Gail Welch.
We can get one for Gail.
We're gonna do it, take it for Gail? I don't know. Don't look like Gail. Give her our thanks. Thank you. Colleen Allen. Thank you, Colleen.
Thanks, Colleen.
Well deserved. Courtney Pinto. Kieran Tumbleton. No.
He's out running.
Michelle Kinsella. There's Michelle. Great.
Thank you,
Thank you
Michelle.
for
Thanks,
coming.
Michelle.
Thank you for all you've done. Cara Dion. Tracy Logan.
No.
Diane Koshev.
No.
Marie Marchetti. Diane Bird. Mark Salois.
Savoy, no.
Savoy, I'm a Frenchman to me. Elaine Alden. Lisa Stevenson. Maureen Tumbleton. Betsy Kruger. Ellen McAuliffe. Allie Balster. Patrick Welch. Are you really Patrick Welch? You're just taking two. Congratulations,
Thank
thank you. And finally, Sue Hadley. Well, thank you to everyone, and the fact that there is such a huge stack says a whole lot about this organization. So thank you to everyone who does so much for this great group. And
And thanks to Bob and
Thanks
Chief
to
Flannery,
Bob.
Emeritus,
absolutely,
for putting so much effort into this.
no kidding. All right, thank you so much.
Use that word all the time. Emeritus.
Him and Clark.
Our next on the agenda is very short. Our consent agenda simply consists of the board minutes, the Board of Selectmen minutes from the November 13, 2018 meeting.
So moved.
All right. Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And opposed, that is unanimous. Okay. And now, is Sarah Bateman here? Okay. Well, we had taken a couple moments, I'll certainly want to speak to it, to recognize Sarah Bateman. Sarah Bateman is the Veterans Services Director for the Metro West region, which of course covers us. And she was quite surprised and honored at the October conference. It was the Veterans Service Conference. She was honored to receive, or our district, because of her leadership, received the Veterans District of the Year Award for Outstanding Service to Veterans. So we thought it was a appropriate thing to honor Sarah and to let everyone know about the great services that our Veterans District of Metro West provides to veterans. And say thank you to Sarah Bateman for the great job she's done, obviously, in receiving this award for the Veterans District. So, sorry she's not here tonight, but congratulations. It's nothing more important than giving good services to our veterans, so. All right. Moving on. we have the Marathon Fund Committee charge. The Board of Selectmen will discuss the Marathon Fund Committee charge. And as I understand it, just as a point of clarification, the Marathon Fund Committee itself will be holding their own discussion and decision on their charge in January. But the idea tonight is not that this board will be making decisions as much as providing input for them to have when they meet in January. Am I stating that correctly?
Yes.
Mr. Kamalo. Okay. So I think we all have a copy of the Marathon Fund charge as it now stands. Is this charge, as it's written now and what was provided in our packet, is this the existing policy or is this a proposed new wording for the charge?
This is the proposed new wording for the charge,
Okay.
which I discussed preliminarily with two representatives of the Marathon Fund Committee. I did present the gist of the discussion at the last Board of Selectmen meeting, and the request that is received from the board back then was you needed to be afforded the opportunity to provide your input. And so today is the day for you to provide the input. I will take that input, share it again with the two representatives of the Marathon Fund Committee. The committee itself is scheduled to meet sometime in January.
And can you encapsulate, is there much of a change between this proposed charge and the language that was in the charge they were working from before?
Yes. In fact, what we had before was a recitation of the history of the Marathon Committee and the Marathon Fund Committee. And there was also an articulation of the programs that the committee could fund.
Mm-hmm.
In addition, there was also an outline of the process that is followed in allocating the different grants through the Marathon Fund program.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's listed twice in our,
Yeah, I think that was just
in
a
our
mistake.
tablet. Or is that just a Scrivener's thing? We don't need it twice. It's not like one's the old and one's the new, correct? You have to, it's not linked, you just have to scroll through.
Yeah, there were two copies of it, but I think
Okay,
that's just two
same thing,
copies.
yeah.
Yeah, it was two copies. So, if I just may, just for clarification, on the second page where it says the Board of, I'm looking at here. So was this wording, this new wording that we have was drawn up by who? By?
The wording that you have in front of you was drafted by the town manager,
Okay,
incorporating the points discussed in my meeting with the two representatives from the Marathon Fund Committee.
okay.
This draft has already been shared with those two representatives. They are reviewing it, and we'll continue our conversation leading to the meeting of the Marathon Fund Committee in January next year.
All right.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question?
Mr. Herr.
So, Mr. Kamalo, up in the purpose, per the town's marathon policy, the portion of the athletic, the monetary payments to the town paid as reimbursement for expenses are considered a gift to the town. The use of such funds is subject to any conditions placed thereon by the BAA, as well as any further restrictions adopted by the Board of Selectmen, period.
Yep.
So is the language in there about the use of such funds is subject to any conditions placed thereon by the BAA? Is that new?
That is not new. That language is actually in the town's marathon policy, the general policy that relates to all marathon activities in town.
Okay, so just, fine.
Yeah.
They've not stuck their nose into this and sort of said, no, you can't do this, yes, you should do that in the past. So I'm okay with it, so long as that practice is sort of how they continue to guide indirectly the distribution of these funds. Do you see any problem with that?
No, I do not see any problem in that. Each year, the BAA has a global discussion with town officials on the use of the marathon resources. And if there are any changes that they propose, they will therefore go through that process where initially there's a discussion with town officials. And if it's an issue that, if an issue is raised that needs to be escalated to the board, that issue will then be brought to the board before it's put in place.
Mr. Catino, does that make sense to you?
I don't know, it sounds like there's a lot of, there's strings that I didn't realize that were there when it came to the marathon fund money. You know, because we just got that letter from them a couple meetings ago where the disbursement was increased, what, about $10,000-$20,000 or something. And, you know, and it goes to, helping out the town with, some of the expenses that we have, but put in, by hosting the start. So I'm just wondering, because the marathon fund vets anything that comes in front of them, and then we further vet it sometimes to, so I'm just wondering, the use of such funds is subject to any conditions placed thereon by the BAA. So I'm just wondering, maybe I should bring that up at the next meeting with the BAA.
In fact, to be clear, a gift is a gift. The giver of a gift can attach conditions. At this point, there are only 2 conditions that have been in place, and they predate the formulation of the policy currently in place regarding marathon-related activities. Those conditions are, 1, part of that gift pays for the cost borne by the town in hosting the marathon. And the second piece is the remainder of the money is a gift to be used by the town for activities related to sporting activities and wellness. Those are the 2 current conditions. I do not want anybody thinking that there are some additional restrictions that have been placed regarding the gift. Again, a gift is a gift. The giver of the gift can specify conditions that they see or deem necessary. It's up to the receiving entity to either accept those conditions or not. So in answer to Brian's question, the town, if ever there are any future restrictions which don't exist now, the town will have the opportunity to discuss, accept or not accept those restrictions.
And I appreciate you saying that. I would challenge, not directly, but just challenge the concept of a gift as a gift when a gift comes following a parade permit. Okay, so the Boston Marathon does not happen unless the citizens of Hopkinton wish it to happen, and we do. But to say that it is a pure gift and we have no control over what comes as a result of the gift coming in, or that there's a lot of strings attached to it, and I know you're not saying that, but I just wanted to challenge you on that concept of the gift. This is a 50-50 partnership with the Boston BAA to host the Boston Marathon here in Hopkinton. We don't want to change that at all. But I saw this language as additional strings as well, but you're saying it's been there before, so I'm okay with that. But I don't want to go beyond that and say that, we're lucky to have it, because there's $100,000 worth of expense that we incur as a community. And we're not going to ask the taxpayers to pay for that. The BAA does pay for that through this gift. Okay, so I wouldn't call it a gift, I'd call it a payment. And then there's additional funds as part of the deal with the parade permit concept that comes in as well, so that we can fund these well-being and, youth fitness programs and things like that.
Could I, through the chair, may I propose an amendment to that language?
Look at him.
Well, we're not.
No, if you could just put those 2, if we could put those 2 conditions, just put those 2 conditions in, as opposed to what we have, my screen shut off.
But as I understand it, we're simply making comments for the Marathon Fund Committee. We're not making motions or votes or anything like that.
No, I'm just
giving input. So
input
you
to
don't
change.
need to make an amendment. You can suggest.
No, amending. I'm saying that amending I make a suggestion to amend the language to say the use of such funds is subject to any conditions placed thereon. The use of such funds is subject to those two conditions. If that's what it
Mr.
is.
Kamalo.
So I'm not sure what's the
Again,
best way to work
exactly.
that out,
Yeah,
but to the chair's point, we're not gonna decide it, we're not supposed to decide anything tonight. The
No.
Marathon Fund Committee really should be getting first crack at this after we give some
Yeah.
input. So that's some input. We're concerned about that language, okay? I think you
We-
can pick up.
Or
on
just
that.
the one.
Exactly.
Or just
Yeah.
the
So
one.
take that to the Marathon Fund Committee and yourself and Elaine, and maybe sort through that a little bit, and then when we decide, then we can get into
Because the
making
Marathon Fund
changes.
Committee, I'm sorry, through the chair, the Marathon Fund Committee doesn't disperse the money to pay for police details and all that stuff. So actually, it really comes down to what you clarify later on as sports related, you get into it later on.
Extra funds.
They get what's left after all the expenses.
Well, no, this is the extra funds though. So, you know, this already is we're already down one level from that. The extra funds, the Marathon Fund Committee doesn't get that
No.
$10, $20, $30, $40,000, whatever it is.
That's
They just
correct.
get the leftover.
Yeah.
So this already is one tier down.
Yeah.
So it really, to have that, what it really comes down to is the line, make recommendations, Board of Selectmen regarding expenditures, the emphasis on projects that have athletic or recreational purpose. See, that says right there, the charge. It's in the charge right there, as opposed to putting, anything with the gift to the town, because it's already one level down from that gift to the town.
Mr. Kamalo, are we guaranteed that there's always gonna be monies additional than what it costs the town to host this?
No.
So that's a concern that I have is,
Yeah, but that's where that license, that's where the parade permit comes in for the following year.
for the following year, but what happens if, they decide that, or however the marathon is run this year, the cost borne to the town is $300,000, and the marathon committee, the BAA decides to give us $120,000. What's to say?
Then that's their last
Yeah.
marathon. That's not gonna happen.
Yeah,
I
no, in
know,
fact,
well, in
yeah.
theory, it's not gonna happen, but if Dave McGilvery is someday replaced by Bernie Madoff, then maybe they will.
That's not gonna happen either.
Well,
Mr. Kamalo,
Yeah.
can you address that?
Yeah. And in fact, this addresses the question that was raised by Mr. Hare. The gift is not attached to the town's regulatory process. In answer to Mr. Tedstone's comment, it is commonly understood between the town and the BAA that the BAA will fully account for the cost of processing its permit application.
And we
Perfect.
talk about that when we do
Yes.
the parade.
Great.
So that's when
Perfect.
you can be comfortable when we do the permit in the spring.
And
Okay.
Right?
they,
You
I'm
can
always-
say,
I'm always comfortable.
they sent us
Yes.
correspondence a while back about what they would be giving us this year and very generous increases for the next few years, anticipating increased costs and their commitment to the town of Hopkinton. I mean, there's always a chance that there was something unexpected and there's gonna be a difference, but looking out several years ahead, they were very generous in giving us scheduled increases to meet anticipated future needs.
so for 2016, the year following the bombing, there was some discussion about increased cost as a result of increased security. And there was it was a very short discussion. It was, yep, no problem.
No question, yeah.
And I don't want anyone to think that I'm implying that the BAA is trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes. I just want to cover the town to make sure that it is at least a net zero for us.
Yeah.
If we can switch gears, I don't know whether this prioritization existed in the old charge, but it seemed to me that the introductory statement says that it would have an emphasis on projects that have an athletic or recreational purpose or contribute to the health and wellness of Hopkinton residents. And most of the fund disbursements we've approved in recent memory had very clear benefits to a group, whether it was a team or an organization or the senior center exercise program. This says priority 1 shall be scholarships. And then priority 2, if funds are available, the committee may recommend expenditures for the following purposes. And then you get into various recreational things. I don't understand why scholarships are the first priority, because that, as wonderful as they are, benefits just an individual student or students as opposed to community-wide. And I would just, and maybe there would be the possibility that in 1 year, a committee would look at this and only give out scholarships and not give any other athletic support.
There's a finite amount of them. It's the same amount every year, the scholarships. And that's been the tradition since it started, was what's it, I think there's like 2 male and 2 female or something like that. It's very limited.
Well, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with scholarships. I'm just surprised that priority 1 is scholarships. It makes it seem like the primary purpose for this is not, first and foremost, a scholarship fund. And I thought priority number 1 was recreational activities that benefit a wider segment of the town.
If I may, in fact, the scholarships are awarded to high school students who are Hopkinton residents for athletic distinction and outstanding community service. Although the scholarship may be going to an individual, the individual's activities in the community have benefited a wider a number of people. That's one. The other piece is, in fact, the prioritization is past practice. This is how it's actually done. It may not have been articulated clearly in the prior charge. In my discussions with the 2 representatives from the Marathon Fund Committee, it was very clear that this is exactly what they do on the ground. This is what they've been doing over the years. So we're simply memorializing past practice.
So are we guaranteed, Mr. Coutinho, you said there's a certain number that they always do. It's not articulated here, but are we guaranteed that it will always be limited to like a certain number and then there will be more community-wide? Or could we, the way this is worded, some year they have a whole bunch of new scholarships and suddenly it turns into just basically totally a scholarship?
No, there's, and I forget what the number is, but it's just a couple of male and female scholarships, or maybe 3 each, I forget at this point.
But what's to prevent that from turning into 10?
Well, because it hasn't in all the years that I've been involved with it.
Well, maybe that should be one of our comments, is
I
that
mean,
it
yeah,
should be
it
limited
could.
to a certain number,
Yeah.
certain number of.
Well,
scholarships.
they've never changed it, so.
I know you're saying they never have, but that isn't a that's not a restricting thing, just to say it's never happened before. I would not personally want to see this any year, just additional scholarships be added for whatever reason, and it turn into strictly, for lack of funds, a
So we could clarify what
scholarship
those are.
program.
The charge can clarify what those are, right?
It just seems to me that some of these monies should go to the community-wide athletic, recreational, health, and wellness purposes that benefit a broad section of the community.
Which they do.
Well, this is where we might
They
need
do
input
right
back
now.
from them.
They do right now, but I would like to make sure that that's
Okay,
codified.
so that's some
In
good
fact-
feedback to take to the committee.
Yes, in fact, as I reported at the last Board of Selectmen meeting, in addition to developing this draft charge, there are other 2 activities that we agreed to do. One, Colleen is putting together an SOP, standard operating procedure, for the scholarship process. Therefore, the point that the board is now discussing can be included in that SOP. The second SOP that the representative from the Marathon Fund Committee is working on is an SOP for the other grants, meaning priority number 2. I have received for example, questions from the public in terms of if anybody is interested in applying for a grant through the Marathon Fund process, how do they do that? Where do they get the forms? The SOP will articulate that process.
And that can spell out the 2 historical for the male, 2 historical for the female, and
Don't go beyond the 2,
I
it could be
understand.
3.
yeah.
But I mean, I would hope that in any given year, these funds would be dispersed in a mixture of ways, so it isn't all, wouldn't ever be consolidated in only one purpose. Because I would hope that the whole town participates in the marathon, the whole town bears sometimes the brunt of the marathon, and it just seems that in the spirit of the BAA giving back to the town, there should be, these monies should, to some extent at least, be used to benefit a wide section of the town.
Sure. If I may through the chair, one of the great things about reading some of the applications that the students write, it's wonderful to see the breadth of the work that they do, and when you get 100, 150 applications, and to see them really try for this, and it's only like $500 or something, you know, but they're just really great to read.
To be clear, I am not making a point that there's anything wrong with scholarships. Scholarships are wonderful. I'm sure each one of these young people is deserving. I'm just saying that for what I see this fund as representing, I would want to assure that a broad base of the citizenry and our athletic programs, our senior programs have an opportunity to be included, that it doesn't ever stray into the area where it only becomes one kind of a donation. That's all I'm saying. Don't need to justify scholarships with me. I thoroughly appreciate that. Other input from other board members? Okay. Are we,
One thought here.
Yeah.
When we're looking at the second priorities, is there, so we have acquisition of town goods, assets, property for athletic, recreational, operating costs. Do we have any kind of prioritization within those bullets?
In fact, that issue was discussed in my meeting with the two representatives from the Marathon Fund Committee. The feeling was that there was no prioritization, and in fact, in my original draft, those three bullets were numbered. We removed the numbering and used bullets so that to emphasize that there's no prioritization.
I would think that operating costs should be something that would be, you know, kind of fund our baseline if we can, and then look at acquisition of additional assets. Just thinking out loud here.
Yeah.
And you know, like through the chair, one of the things that I say when the Marathon Fund Committee comes with recommendations of what they're asking us to endorse, we have to remember that they are a committee, and you know, we shouldn't be totally micromanaging that committee also by tying their hands and saying only do this, only do that, because you know, again, we should be working with them. You know, we do appoint some of them, and we should be working with them and not just really tying their hands on this whole thing.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get that overall. Good.
Okay.
Everybody else set? Okay, Mr. Kamali, you feel you have a good sense of board's recommendations to take to them?
Yes.
Okay.
I do. Well said.
All right, well, good. Then, moving on.
Here's the fun one.
So, next on the agenda, we have the 2019 Boston Marathon Invitational's random distribution. The board will hold a public random distribution of marathon invitational entries to qualified applicants for the 2019 Boston Marathon. And the number of numbers we have this year, Mr. Kamalo, is?
We have 50 invitational entries issued by the BAA. We received applications from 26 entities. And then this evening, I just received an email that is requesting an invitational entry. I just want the board to be aware of that. That email is coming way after the deadline.
I'm sorry, what was that from?
It was from the HCA and ESL.
Okay.
So of the 26 entities that have requested, I took a look through. The only one that I see that may not be Hopkinton-based is the Semper Fi Fund. However, that is one that's been rock solid with us. So I know last year there were other towns that were putting requests in, and we wanted to keep it as, because we didn't have enough bibs for all the requests, we wanted to keep it to Hopkinton-based. And based on what I'm looking at here, minus the Semper Fi Fund, which I'm totally 100% in favor of, I see that all the other businesses seem to be Hopkinton-based. Would I be correct in saying that?
Yes, you're correct. The specific requirement that the board approved was that the organization perform public service activities in Hopkinton, and this organization does.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to vet it down. Like last year, we had a long conversation, and we could have eliminated some of it by throwing out the people that weren't Hopkinton-based, and it doesn't look like we can do that this year. It looks like it's already vetted, so.
Yeah.
And these are all nonprofit entities?
Yeah, there is one application that came in, and I understand from Maria, and again, Town Hall was closed today. I don't know if Dale, the Friends of the Hopkinton have not yet submitted their 501c3 status.
C4.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, C4?
It's a C4.
Oh, okay.
I did submit a form that had our C4 number on it. She was looking for something additional.
Yes.
I spent an hour and a half on the phone with the IRS. I was not able to get the form, another form.
That's hard to believe.
Yeah. That was my second call.
With the efficiency.
So which one is that again?
My name's Brian Hurd, if they're watching.
Number 26 is the friend.
Everything, just to talk to them.
Okay, but it's going to be a 501, it's gonna be a
It is.
nonprofit.
It
It is,
is.
okay, that's
Yes.
good.
Yeah.
Fine. Madam Chair, can I ask a couple questions? So
Mr. Hurt,
you
please.
said we got 50 numbers, correct?
Yeah, with 50 numbers, we have 26 requests from the nonprofits, and then 24 departmental requests.
Right, so that's what I wanna get into next. Let's talk about the departmental stuff first, and then we'll see where we go from there. So you're saying the department has 12 and 3 is 22, and the library's 2 is 24.
Yes.
Is that the same as last year? In other words, the 50 goes to 28 real quick.
Yeah.
If we're matching our department distribution from last year.
That is the same as last year. If you're speaking specifically of that distribution, 26 and 24.
28 and 22. This is,
No,
wait,
it's
I'm
26
confused.
and 24.
Oh, 26 and 24, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Got it.
Well, if I may jump in, one of the things I did looking through this was just working off of, first priority is it would be nice if everybody gets something. Every group that wants some access to a number has some access to a number. And there are a couple organizations who have access to numbers without the ones we are giving out tonight. The Respite Center, it says there are 35 given to us by the BAA and 10 additional entries requested to Crosspoint. So I don't know if they'll have 35 or 45, but that group has some. Semper Fi has said they have 15. And Huffington Public Library Foundation has one through the BAA, and also the fire department, one of their requests is for respite and one is for Keep Smiling for Abby. So there are a couple of organizations there that have access already. So I picked out, going through all the ones that didn't have any access to any numbers, I picked out 24 right there. If you just gave one to each group that didn't have access to anything already. And then I went through the departments, and I think I came up with another 22, which gave 46 and left about an extra 4. I was thinking we should start by.
Well, if I may, Madam Chair, I know that the Semper Fi Fund, I questioned Michelle about this. That 15 does not necessarily go to the Semper Fi. That's basically the whole Marine Corps, and that comes from the
different group.
Yeah, there's several different groups. So I said, "You really get 15?" And she said, "Oh, I thought I was supposed to put down what comes to for the whole entity."
So last year, didn't we take a look at this and say, all right, so this year, for example, we have 50 bibs to give out. We have 24 departmental requests. We have 26 requests. Some have requested 2, but 26.
27 if we have HCA in there.
Right, but they missed the deadline.
Okay, but, all right, we'll cover that later.
So, couldn't this whole thing be cut real short by saying, follow the same practice that we did last year and give everybody one, give the departments what they want, 50-50, done, move on?
That's the safest way to do it.
Couldn't we do that?
Oh, it certainly add up, right?
Yeah.
Make a motion.
So I'd like to make a motion to, if I may, to allot 1 bib to each of the 26 entities that have applied, and the remaining 24 bibs that we have would go to the departmental requests. 12 to the police, 3 to fire, 2 to senior center, 5 to marathon committee, and 2 to the public library.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Madam Chair, so the HCA ESL came in late, correct?
Correct.
How late? It wasn't a matter of minutes, right? It was.
It was months. It was due what, November, what was the deadline date? 21st.
So did they have one last year?
They did, I believe. I can check. I believe they did.
And is there any town department that's higher this year than last year?
No.
They're all the same?
Yes.
And the same departments?
Well, except that the fire department, one of the ones they're requesting is Keep Smiling for Abby, who are also requesting one through us.
Right, which we did last year.
But, I mean, so they're getting 2, whereas all these other entities are only getting 1. I mean, you could take that one and give it to HCA, and that way they'd each get 1 instead of one getting 2 and the other getting nothing.
But we can't tell the fire department what to do with theirs, though. Just because they're being honest and telling us up front who they're giving it to.
Yeah, we've done that for a few years now with the Keep Smiling for Abby. I wouldn't want to change that.
No, I wouldn't.
And I'm not trying to throw a monkey in the wrench here to get this done.
I'm just trying to find a
No,
way
I
to
understand.
do the
I
HCA.
understand. That's
The
what we're-
HCA ESL is a huge part of Hopkinton.
It is.
Does a
Yep.
fabulous
It is.
job. It's unfortunate they were late, but you know, they're like the rest of us. We're all busy doing a million different things.
But
I'm just
then
trying to see if there's a place where we could find one for them, but.
to take one from somebody, that's what I'm saying.
I mean, I know what the police does with the numbers. They need them to get help, and it's a way to sort of bargain a little bit.
We can ask the police if they have an extra one.
Either that, or the only reason I was suggesting keep smiling for Abby, is Live for Evan will be getting one. I see those as sort of similar organizations. They're both Hopkinton-based. They're both for a particular ailment. They both are memorializing young Hopkinton people who, you know, tragically passed early. You know, if we do this the way we are, the Abbey Foundation will get 2 and Evan will get 1. And we're saying we'd like to have 1 more to give to HCA. So if you did it that way, both groups would be getting 1 and HCA would get 1.
So I struggle with taking away fundraising opportunities for 2 young people whom we lost.
Yeah.
And these efforts are on behalf of their name to carry on their good work in their lives. So I don't see a way out here. I think it is what it is for this year, and we'll just encourage everybody to get in here next year.
But that way, is there a way to give 2 to Live for Evan? Because Evan's asked for 2.
Yeah,
Evan hasn't asked for 2, Evan's asked for 1, and the fire department's giving a second one away.
Evans asked for 2.
Everybody asked
Oh,
for,
yeah.
Everybody's getting
asked for-
1.
Yeah, everybody's.
And that
well,
way, you
actually,
know,
everybody asked
Abby
for
will
5.
end up
Yeah.
getting 2 and Evan will get 1.
So,
We're
and
giving everybody else 1
I don't
here.
wanna sound,
I think Norman
I don't
said
want
the
it to come out cold that I'm saying you missed the deadline, you're out. I'm just saying that,
It's the deadline.
I mean, they did, and I'm very much, like Mr. Hurst said, I'm very much for the HCA and ESL. It's a great organization. But.
All right, I think we have a motion. I'm ready.
Mr.
Kamala,
Kamala looks like
Kamala.
he's trying to say something.
Over the years, there are entities that show up at town hall with such requests after the fact. And what we normally do is we go back into our network and see if we can help them. I think we can do the same for the HCA.
Okay, good.
Okay, so we'll leave the HCA out for the present time and work with the 26 who've applied and the 24 departmental requests and see if after the fact there can be something done through a different channel
Yes.
for HCA.
Awesome. I think that's great.
And a word to other organizations that deadline's the deadline is a rule. I mean, if it keeps occurring, then we have a problem.
Good.
Okay, I believe the motion was made and seconded. Not? Okay, motion has been made and seconded to grant one of, let me see if I have the motion document here that said it the way you wanted me to say it. No, that's not it. Here it is. Okay, I request a motion to distribute 24 entries to town departments as follows. Police department is 12, fire department is 3.
That was all in the motion.
Yeah, there actually, there already is one motion on the table. So we either have to vote that one up or down before we do one.
Yeah, which was 24 and 26.
Okay.
24 and 26.
So then I don't need
And
to
I broke it
itemize.
out as requested.
Okay, all right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, that's unanimous. All right, so we don't need to go through all these things. Okay, good,
Excellent.
excellent, okay. Good thing the math came out this
Yeah,
time, it's
I
not
know, I
always
guess
that,
the
it's
math
not
came out
always
right.
that easy.
Unfortunately.
All right.
You wanna do something on trees, okay. Okay, next on the agenda is tree management in the town. This is kind of an ongoing discussion. John Catino will review the need for tree management in town. Mr. Catino, take it away.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Doug. Thank you.
Okay.
Wait for the crowd. I know, no reason.
I thought this was tabled.
I had not seen Haley.
No,
I'm
I
ready.
suggested tabling it, but he was ready to do it, so we'll do it.
Okay, we got a time limit.
There'll be a quiz on it later.
Ah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Reed,
Okay.
again.
You wanna speak first, John?
Yes, please. Well, I have to introduce it. Thank you. So, yeah, this is one of the this is one of the third rails that we don't usually like to talk about trees, trash, and trails. but it's important. As important as tree management is, and roadway management actually is, but it has to continue to be as part of an overall DPW strategic plan. Now, it's something that we've been talking about for several months, and I'm sure that Mr. Kamalo and Mr. Westerling will bring that forward in the near future. But a municipality is responsible for providing safe passage for our mobile society. And from time to time, this includes work on the roadside or right-of-way tree. Sometimes tree work must be done in emergency situations. Sometimes the work is performed as part of an ongoing annual maintenance. And sometimes, if budgets allow, the work is contracted. Some pitfalls and problems are associated with the right-of-way tree care, but following some common sense tips from professional arborists, our town can improve its roadside tree maintenance program and avoid these problems. Sometimes people ask why maintain roadside trees. To secure public safety and reduce potential liability. The prime directive for municipal officials is to secure the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens. And this applies when dealing with the right-of-way trees. Low-hanging branches, diseased or dead trees and limbs, and trees too close to the road can become hazardous to the traveling public. Keeping municipal employees safe while working on roads is a prime concern also. We really have to continue to promote tree health care. We also have to take care in making sure that the sides of the roads are taken care of. If we have some very narrow roads, and there are many areas of town that don't have sidewalks. And during the summer, the soft shoulders are covered with poison ivy, poison oak, poison sumac, and if you're riding a bike or walking a dog, and two cars come by, you're forced to jump into the poison ivy. So this is stuff that I know years ago that we took care of, and I just want to have the citizens of the town knowing that we are talking about it again, and that we are taking it seriously, and it really should be part of a strategic plan going forward. So, with that, Mr. Regan, you've been really helping us out on some guidance. And I did a lot of research. Actually, right next to us, we have Grafton has a great roadside tree management plan, and then the Massachusetts Department of Transportation, Texas Department of Transportation has a really great outline for stuff that we can look at, and we even have Vancouver, and we have London in here. But they're actually, they clear out their trees at 16 feet 6 inches because they have to accommodate the double-decker buses. Most of our municipalities are 16 feet or some 14 feet clearance over the roads, so that when a truck goes underneath, that they don't break off limbs and have them drop on the car behind them, like happened to me over the summer, which is why I'm pushing this a lot.
You've covered all the bases, John. That's great. I can go.
All right.
It's going to go fast here, people. I won't tie you up. We'll go through this and expand on a couple of these things here. Advantages of a Hopkinton Tree Department. Be proactive, not reactive, which right now it's all we are is reactive. When something happens, we go out, talk to fire department. They're proactive. Fire prevention, we need to do the same thing. John cutting back, and the sidewalks too. There are some places in town where you can't see sidewalks. Nobody's maintaining them, so people are walking on the roads. I don't know, I think we should save money on sidewalks, period. The 16-foot clearance, I think that's what's recommended pretty much. The lines of sight at your intersections and sharp curves when the foliage is on the trees. You're going around a sharp bend, somebody's walking and you're walking into traffic, that's what we're always taught. I've nearly clipped a few myself, and I'm not a fast driver. I mean, all of a sudden they're there and you have to move quickly. The dead, poorly structured, and excessively leaning trees. It isn't just the dead trees. I know everybody acknowledges, and we've had some with the gypsy moth, the winter moth, and the drought, and roadside chemicals, or road chemicals, and all that jazz. But we have a lot more coming down the road. And before I go any further, too, I want to put I guess you call it a shout out, to Eversource. I've been in this business going pretty near 50 years now. I can't believe that. But this is the most that I've ever seen Eversource take on. We've had 2 or 3 contractors in town. I talked to the arborist, Chris Gonzalez, yesterday, asking him for an approximate figure. They have spent $100,000 on line clearing, which really keeps the power on in good weather. That's where they trim the wires, trim the limbs around the wires. They spent $250,000 so far on tree removals. And that's not 1 penny to us, and they still have another $1.50 left in the budget. So they're gonna be spending $500,000, which I've never thought I'd live to see that day. And they got very professional crews doing this job. They're doing a great job. And just general pruning as well, people, going down the road, pruning these trees up. Not only removal, but pruning. You got some dead up there, 60 feet up, and an object gains its own unit of weight for every foot it falls, plus 10. Hits the ground, it hits with a force. Assistant keeping the trails open, Mike liked that one there. Try to help out with keeping all of our trails that we're developing around town. Street lights. We have some street lights up there that are illuminating leaves, and that's it. How the tree department do that? You go up in your bucket and you cut around them. Again, maintenance. And replacing burned light bulbs. I've done several of those when Bobby Butler was around. And I said to Brandon, you do that. You don't send anybody a bill for replacing one light bulb. You keep stuff like this in town. That's how you save a buck. Eventually combining, and Brandon, we talked about this, a tree, park, and cemetery department. Long ways down the road, I grant you that, but it can be done. And John's favorite, the poison ivy control program. That will take years to knock it down. It is up 3 or 4 feet. If you're out walking or running by, you know, you've got to get out of the way. You better hope you don't have a terrible allergy to poison ivy. It's 3 and 4 feet. It takes years to bring the layers down. We had it done, so when I was tree warden, and then we just couldn't do it anymore. Incidentals, putting up and taking down of flags and banners. My wife wanted to mention that one. It really does not look great to see our town employees standing on a stepladder in the back of a pickup truck, putting up flags. That's an invitation for a complaint, right? That's insane. We can do better than that, people. Assisting the highway department with snow removal operations. How's the tree department do that when you have a big snowstorm? It isn't always damaging like it is up country right now, or like we had last March. The DPW, you park, it's around town Framingham, you park your trucks and you assist the DPW with plowing, salting, sanding, whatever they need. It is a joint effort, simple as that. What? I left my readers back there. What does the tree department consist of? Basically a working foreman / assistant tree warden. Mass General Law allows a tree warden to appoint an assistant tree warden with pretty much the same powers he has to make decisions on the spot, as opposed to having to contact the tree warden for every single thing you get done. This eliminates a lot of bureaucracy. At least 3 additional personnel. Now that sounds like a lot, but to make a crew efficient, at least 2, hopefully 3. And the summer help. This summer help would be great to clear the sides of the road. That's not a lot of skill needed. Equipment needed. Capital purchases would include, and I know we're going off the rails here on this one, but eventually, a 75-foot bucket truck. Our trees haven't gotten any shorter over the years. I started off with a 55, and now you need 75. They're just getting taller, and these hangers, if you notice, every once in a while, you'll see one on the side of the road. These were the ones that broke off back in March, and they're just working their way down. You gotta be able to reach them. A log truck, a little 6-wheel log truck to pick up the mess that you make, and a chip truck to chip into. This is what a little company like mine has. It works very nicely. We have a chipper. It is old. Mike made a note over here, 25 years old, but it hasn't gotten a lot of use. It really hasn't. And I bought a stump grinder for the town when I was tree warden there, and that's in pretty good shape. Equipment to control poison ivy. That's a big thing. That can be done in-house. If people take their pesticide tests, get their licenses, that can be done here, and that will be an ongoing thing. And of course, the equipment would be the appropriate tree tools, saws, and all that. Again, we talked about money before that. We're not even anywhere near that yet. Just trying to get something, and I know that Brendan has got something in the works already. But Mike and Peter, I guess Peter didn't make it. Peter Mezzett, you can pass that on about doing the nursery and the planting, Mike.
Okay. I had a discussion with Peter Mezzett today, and he's very interested in cooperating with giving me access to some land to plant out some trees so we could use it in two different ways of using it, is growing it or storage. That would be healing them in. And then the other thing is to let them grow. If it's some kind of damage or something, to put it in a holding area. So Peter is very, very interested in cooperating with us in working towards a better tree town. Aesthetics. So it would be planting and aesthetics, and perhaps reviewing the plans on the types of trees the builders would plant. We've had issues with that type of thing. And then the techniques for planting. A lot of times they just plant them too deep and they die. And the way you see that is the top branches are dead because they're trying to push out another set of roots. So constantly you see street trees dead on the top. It's because they're planted too deep. So Peter mentioned maybe a process of inspecting that and making sure good trees go in, the proper tree goes in, and it's planted the proper way. That's things that are down the line after we get established.
Peter was willing to, they have land up on Wilson Street.
Yeah.
And when we talked about using some of Joe Pratt's land for a nursery, I forget who brought that up, and I was standing with Peter at the nursery, and Peter said, I have 20 acres of land up on Wilson Street, the town's happy to use. In a joint effort, it would benefit both of us. It's been planted before, the irrigation is there, the electrical is there. He's willing to go all in with this to help us out. In other words, when I was tree warden, I took down a lot of trees that these builders planted because they were inferior, but they satisfied the plannable requirements of a tree every 40 feet, which I would really love to review that. That's a waste of time. You should develop a price on per tree to be planted and put it into a tree planting account and let the tree warden or the assistant tree warden determine what should go where. Because we're wasting a lot of money planting trees that have no business being there. They could, other parts of town, it doesn't have to be in that subdivision. It can be elsewhere in town. Some of these subdivisions are going right through the woods. You don't need to replant, but we could use it someplace else. And the requirement, I think, is every 40 feet. There should be, I believe. No, I thought you, anyway, it is. Regardless, something like that anyway.
So we're constantly cutting down dead trees and not replacing them. There used to be a lot more shade in town.
A lot fewer people.
Well, we had
There was
7%
fewer
more hair,
people then.
too.
So, there's still standing dead trees right now. Standing dead tree up at the water towers, and a standing dead tree down at the Common, and many others.
When we accept the open spaces, which is always great, we also accept, unfortunately, the responsibility and the liability of adjoining neighbors' trees. And I got called when I was tree warden. Reed Park was a great one, way in the woods someplace. Well, the Mass General Law on tree warden reads the public way, the traveled way, verbatim. That's really all we have to take care of, unless, like Park Department says, will you help us out on the common? But by law, that's all the tree warden is responsible for. And of course, we go way beyond that, but that takes money and that takes time. Again, something that could be done in-house, maintaining the parks. Very easy, the trails. Just a lot can be done to get something going with this. I think there'd be an interest in people doing it. Some of the highway guys are interested in learning the nuances of tree work, if you will, and that'd be great. We did have some good people down there, then we've kind of lost some of them. Whatever. That's it, end. Yeah, I missed the edict, by the way. When did the selectmen say we're joining Brothers of the Brush?
Oh,
Clay, you're next. You're the only one.
Oh, that won't happen.
Is this gonna happen for the 350th? You got a long way to go.
They
I think
might
you
not
may
know who
be
the
putting the
brothers are.
forest before the trees.
So,
Mr. Herb, you have some input here.
does Mass General Law require that the tree warden be a separate entity from the DPW? Or
No.
can you have a tree warden inside a DPW, or someone designated as a tree warden inside?
He
the
can wear
DPW?
two hats, yeah.
Well, right now, it's John Westerland
Yeah.
is doing it. He's doing it.
He is the tree warden?
Yes.
Okay. So why would we have to have a separate tree department? Why couldn't we just charge the DPW with tree management and outline with the expertise of others what that work should entail? And if that requires 2 additional people plus 2 others that are in the department now to go help do the work with those 2, I mean, adding 3 or 4 people to a town budget is gonna be met with some resistance.
I
Just
agree.
Not only here, but at least, town-wide. But if we were to think about adding responsibility to the DPW with some staffing to help and a trucker, I mean, we can figure out the asset piece too. Maybe that would be a way to go. Instead, I guess my thing is, I'm all for this. I think it's a big safety issue in town. I've had some tree issues at the house, and as a runner, I've had things fall on my head plenty of times, which can explain a few things probably. But a new department, I would not support. Us managing our trees and charging the DPW or some other entity, whoever that is in town, to manage the trees and then give them the resources they need to get it done, I would support.
And I see John walk in.
If I may, through the chair.
We got a comment from
And that's
John?
why I started it off with that the most important thing is to work through the DPW, see their strategic plan, where they try and fit this in. In the last like 14 months, there've been 3 major letter to the editors in the paper, where people really are screaming for some tree management. And especially after the storms last year, where many of us were out of power for 4 days. And it gets tough, and it's dangerous. And it's just, it's something that slowly evolves. It's okay. It's what happened to us with our sidewalks and other things. And people do it at their homes with maintenance or with their cars. You don't take care of it, and it's like, I'll put off an oil change, and then you put it off, and so we put off with the, doing some tree trimming. We put off taking care of with the poison ivy, and then it just starts growing on us, and all of a sudden it's a huge problem. And so we really have to get into looking at some of this maintenance, how it happens. Believe that, as you said, leave it up to the professionals to figure out how we can get it done. But we really do have to start putting this in as one of our priorities, and work it into our budget.
I realize it's a big pill to swallow, don't get me wrong. But you need a dedicated tree department. You don't need a part-time. And within the DPW, those guys we got 110 miles of road, man, and we don't have half the people that we need down there. We were short, I think John will tell you, we were short-handed. I talked to Mike during this last storm. A couple of guys are out. One guy's got a rotator cuff, a couple of guys are on vacation, some equipment didn't come back. Luckily, it wasn't a big storm. I think John can speak to that, and I think the guys covered it well. But you need, during that storm, we had plowing and we had trees down everywhere. You didn't have enough people to deal with that. They had to plow up to the tree and go around and do something else. We need a tree department to come out and take care of that while the highway guys deal with the storm. Now, are they gonna happen a lot? They say they are, I don't know. But it's good to have a separate department, it really is, so they can focus on that. And like I said, when the department needs extra people, then you go and you help the DPW or the water department, whatever's available. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, Brian, yeah, absolutely.
My background, I'm sorry.
Mr. Bolson, go ahead.
My background is, I worked at Western Nurseries, 7 or 8 years, and then I did 20 years, I worked at Cedar Lawn Tree Service. Most of the arborists, well, all of them had college degrees. Most of them were 4-year degrees in arboriculture. When you're talking about dead trees, okay, You don't have to know all that stuff. But there is a lot of other stuff. The EHAP with the wires overhead, they all have certifications on that.
Electrical hazard awareness program, yeah.
And you came from UMass, right?
Nichols, actually
Yeah.
Nichols. Business degree in forestry. I can count trees really well.
Yeah. So there's a lot of training, a lot of training certificates.
Ongoing safety programs.
Certifications. There's a long list of it that typically the person needs to be dedicated to trees, a green person.
I don't disagree at all with all the things you've pointed out and all the needs, and I think it would be just a great thing if we as a town could do all that, and, you know, what you've laid out, that the town could do it up Brown. But, you know, I coming right now, I agree with Mr. Herr for where we are at this particular time. We haven't started talking too much about the budget process, but that is going to be happening. And, you know, you've all probably read in the paper some of the real challenges right now with the explosion in the schools and the explosion in that department. And the new growth is less, and the projections are down. And it's going to be a tough budget year, and it's going to be a couple of tough budget years from what we can see. And, you know, all this stuff costs money. I would be interested to see some costs applied to these ideas. But the creation at this time of entire new bureaucracy with benefits and pensions and all the rest that goes with it, I think it's a really tough ask right now. I was noticing, pull back an email that was sent just a couple weeks ago about some of the tree removal that was done and is being done in the town through Eversource, just kind of shows some numbers. The town recently removed 7 trees for $12,800 for an average cost of $1,800 per tree. Eversource is going to be taking out 145 dead trees for the town, ranging from 6 inches to more than 36 inches. The average cost multiplied by the 145 trees to be removed equals $261,000. In summation, 145 town trees are being removed at no cost to the town, savings of approximately $261,000. So, you know, that's what it costs to take down trees. Just taking down the trees. You know, whether we could somehow scale this back in a way that we had a kind of a middle ground of some things that we could look to do, whether this type of tree removal could be a capital request, and we had a poison ivy removal program, and team up with the DPW. I don't know. I'm not arguing that the need is there. I just, as Mr. Herr says, I can't see a whole creation of a new department
Not
in
right
this
away, no.
budget.
I'm looking down the
situation.
road, Claire. Little by little, I'm trying to lay that's what we've been doing now for our 3rd time up here.
We
Trying to
cut
lay the
people.
groundwork to get something going.
Start somewhere.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
I mean, I get that you have to have focus in any business, any operation. You need to have focused people doing focused things. And the idea of a new department and additional people, and then they're gonna want, you know, administrative help, and before you know it, you got 10 people in a new department, and that's 10 OPEB numbers, and that's 10 more, you know, bazillions of dollars and all kinds of liability down the road. But the idea of focus makes sense. So maybe you start with, quote, a new department of 1. And that new department of 1 is a dedicated tree warden who either reports to the town manager or to the director of public works, probably the director of public works. And that person has to draw on the labor and coordinate with the DPW to get the additional help to make things happen. but that person's job is tree management, tree safety in Hopkinton. And then we can go from there. But, you know, I'm just looking forward to 2 months from now, or 3 months from now, I shouldn't say looking forward, but when we get 3 months from now, and we're sitting in this room with our colleagues from the school committee, and there's 800 new kids, literally, some crazy number like that, and millions of dollars of additional need there, and then all kinds of other money as a result of that needed for public safety, because of the growing population, and et cetera. You know, 3 or 4 people, in my head, that's 300 or 400 grand, all in, fully loaded, with salaries, benefits, expenses, trucks, cars, yada, yada, yada. So it's a lot of money. So maybe one person, a new department, because we got to get focused, because we live in the forest out here. But then the labor piece of that is somehow blended with DPWT.
So, if I may, first of all, I want to thank Joe for coming up and putting all this legwork into this. This has absolutely, this doesn't assist Joe or his business. It actually is detrimental to his business, because if he's working on stuff like this, it precludes him from doing a lot of the work. So what people need to understand is that people like Joe Regan, Mike Bolson, the Mezet family, they're in this for Hopkinton, and they're longtime Hopkinton people. And this town, we're losing longtime Hopkinton people. So people that come in for 10 years and leave, they don't get that there was the Cook Cumlins, the Bob Bartletts, the Docky Haywards, the people like that really are into this town for the town and not for themselves. And I understand what you're saying, and I don't think that in this budget crisis that we're in right now, that we can justify putting a 10-person department together and call it the tree department, or buy green trucks and letter them up, and I don't think that that's what anyone wants. I think that, yeah, the schools, they're having a boom, and we are gonna have to fund that. How much is it gonna cost if a town-owned tree falls on a bus stop and kills 3 kids? How much is that gonna cost? God forbid, but how much is it gonna cost? There are trees all over the place that need to come down. And is it cheaper to train 3 or 4 of our existing staff, go out and have them get certified, and procure the equipment, and have them start going out and hitting some of the hardest spots, some of the most dangerous spots? Or is it cheaper to call a Joe Regan, American Climbers, a Lewis Tree, whoever goes out there, and charge the $1,800 a tree? It's not cheaper to hire these companies to come in and cut these trees down. So I think that we do need to take a very serious look at this. I don't think that in our budget situation that we have now, that we can afford to start a tree company. I would love to start a tree/parks department. I would love it, but realistically, it's not going to happen. But seriously, you have to think about, like, I speak to people all the time, and people think I'm anti-schools, and then when I tell them that I'm not anti-schools and I explain to them why, they understand. And then I'll get anti-fire department, anti-police, no matter what. And if you walk on water, they'll say it's because you can't swim. So, yeah, we do need the teachers. We do. But if we put 200 more teachers on, and then we have to lay off a couple of cops, now we have a narcotic problem, an opioid problem, and then we don't have an ambulance to go and take care of the people. And if Lord forbid, if it snows, we don't even have plows to plow the snow, but we'll have 400 more teachers. Or vice versa, if we put it all towards police and to the opioid crisis, then we're not gonna have enough teachers to run the schools, and we're gonna have 45 kids. So there's pluses and minuses and checks and balances. And I do think that we do need to attack some of this, and you know, we will figure out a way to get it done. And I know, Joe, I know that you're not coming up here saying we need to have a tree department put in, but it's something that we seriously need to look at. And I totally am in your favor, and I do believe that that's the case. You know, like you said, the sidewalks. You walk down Pleasant Street, you gotta almost walk on Pleasant Street to go through some of the sidewalks. My antenna broke off my truck the other day driving down the street because there was some overbrush that came down and hit the antenna. So, so I think that we do need to look at it realistically, and I think that it's a wonderful asset to have someone like you, as passionate as you are and as knowledgeable as you are, which I know that you probably don't get that compliment very often.
Especially from my wife.
So I would love to work with you and try to figure out, put our heads together and figure out what we can do and what our next step is within the restraints of our budget and our manpower.
If I may, through the chair. Yeah, I see this as a mindset change. You know, we have the schools that are going to hit us in a couple weeks with a lot of new students. You know, and the fire and the police, you know, as first responders. But we have to think of the DPW department as public safety. That's the problem. We just think of them as when everything's going well, nobody thinks about DPW. But they are public safety. If they don't plow the roads, fire trucks don't get there. The police cars don't get there. Kids don't get to school. So we've got to start thinking of the DPW as also public safety. And this tree issue, is part of public safety. You know, and because it's a quiet department, everything goes well. At every budget season, we cut DPW. It's like, well, they're not cops, they're not ambulance, they're not schools. Schools have a school committee that can help them out. But who helps out the DPW? They needed a truck last year. It's like, well, we can get this 60,000 we can put someplace else. But this is the stuff we have to think of them as public safety, because without them there is no public safety.
Through the chair. I mean, I think everything that we're all saying makes sense. We know that this is a problem that needs to be dealt with, and we also know that there's budget constraints that are going to prevent it. But I think you're right when you say, let's lay the groundwork now. Let's start thinking about this. And I think having Brian's suggestion of having one person designated to deal with trees, maybe the what we task that person with is coming up with a strategic plan for how we're going to attack this, and how we'll go about dealing with all the trees and the poison ivy issue and everything else. But as we sit here talking about, none of us have arborist degrees, and we've just heard that there are four-year degree programs. I mean, maybe that's what we should be doing, is delegating this responsibility to somebody who is well versed in the subject.
Definitely agree.
And kind of let that person start moving it forward. Not in a new tree department now, but a new tree department or a mechanism for dealing with this later.
It sounds like everyone's on the same same plane.
What about
I did my job.
if the DPW were to hire a new person and he had horticulture experience? He say he was an arborist, Mass Arborist certification. That would be a criteria to get on the department.
I think that's what Brian's talking about, yeah.
Yeah.
Starting with one, yeah.
Well, the next new hire.
I see our DPW director, Mr. Westerling, is there. And he's serving as our tree warden now. He's been a tree warden in other towns. Do you have any thoughts or input on this, Mr. Westerling, or just want to listen? I don't mean to put you on the spot. I just wondered if you wanted to be included in the discussion at all.
Madam Chair, I'm happy to give my thoughts.
Please.
And for the record, I'm always happy to put him on the spot.
You'll do it.
Thank you, Jim.
Good evening. Through the chair, thanks to Joe and to Mike for coming forward with this idea, and thanks to you all for your support of the DPW and the work that we do. We do have a budget for tree removal. It is only $40,000. We've had to cut that back. We sought more last year, but we had to cut it back due to budget constraints. And that gets us the ability to remove maybe 25 trees. With 110 miles of road with trees on both sides, that's 220 miles worth of tree-lined roads. Thanks to our partners at Eversource, we are getting quite a few trees removed that are saving us some $250,000. We did have a tree warden who passed away, was it 2 years ago now?
Yeah, I can't believe it.
that worked per diem, and anytime there was an issue, we would call Paul, who would go out and look at the trees and would then contract for tree removal work. We have been looking in our strategic plan, we have been looking at the concept of bringing in a tree removal division, if you will, but that's 2 full-time employees minimum. That's a bucket truck, which is $170,000, and that comes along with the possibility of back injuries, slip and fall injuries. It's very dangerous work. So what we've been relying on is the $40,000 that we have, that when a dangerous tree is brought to my attention as the acting tree warden, I immediately call for it to be removed. We can't have that liability and risk on the community. So that's where we are. We are looking at the possibility, but it will bring added cost to the operation of the department.
May I say that when I was talking to the arborist yesterday, whose name you gave me there, Gonzalez, Chris Gonzalez. He spoke very highly of working with this guy. He said it's a pleasure to work with. That's why we're getting so much done.
Thank you.
That's why we're getting so much done, yep.
So, Madam Chair, would it make sense for, because we are almost in full swing here with the budget season, but would it make sense for the Board of Selectmen, through the town manager, to suggest the DPW director that as part of his submission for his budget this year, that this discussion be, 1, remembered, and 2, acted on in some manner as you present a budget to us, because we always want to know what the adders are, right? And we can see then what kind of impact we're looking at, and with whatever that impact is, budget-wise, what do we get for that impact? Like, what's gonna happen as a result of that? And then we can kind of take it from there. I mean,
So, to clarify, what are you suggesting he include in his budget? I'm not quite
I
sure
don't know if
what
we
you're
should
asking.
micromanage it. I think we should leave it up to him, because if he's only got,
Yeah, I'm just not quite sure what.
you know, if he's only got 40,000 now, what could he do? You know, just to have him come back to us and say, you know,
His number's are already in, I believe, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so the budget number's are already in.
okay,
And far be it from any of us to try to, get involved in the day-to-day operation, but, I guess to kind of be cognizant moving forward, if you are looking to put a guy on, then maybe think about, if you can say one of the prerequisites is to have a 4-year arborist degree, and if you can find someone that wants to come and apply to work for you with that, then, maybe that would be great, but I'm not trying to get involved with your day-to-day operation.
Use
So
bucket truck.
how about this idea, though, if I could? Are there people out in the marketplace that are 1099 contractors that would work for multiple municipalities and be a tree warden, be like a private tree warden, if you will, and have one person who, I don't know, Ashland, maybe Ashland's got a tree warden that also is the tree warden for Southborough, and they're paid, by each of the communities, and some kind, it's somebody we could get focus on. It wouldn't cost us $250,000, and it could start the process that we need to go down a path for, sooner than later. I don't know, I'm just.
Like our gas and electric inspectors.
But.
Like our town council. Our town council is our town council. Our town council is town council for about 10 other communities. Maybe not that many, but he works for other communities. He's at our town meeting for a week. Next week he's at another town meeting. But he's our town council. We could have a tree warden maybe doing the same thing. I don't know. I'm just, Mr. Kamal and I are chatting, and maybe that's an idea.
I'm not quite understanding what you're looking for, though, because it appears that what we need is to get work done. There's stuff that needs to be done. Mr. Westerling is serving as our tree warden. He's been a tree warden before. I mean, maybe he doesn't have an arborist degree, but I'm not sure it's the tree warden position that's making the difference. It's that there's actual physical work that's not getting done. I don't think it's for want of a tree warden, because we do have a tree warden.
Yeah, a tree warden is not gonna,
take the
he's
trees
not,
down.
like John Westerling, with his tree warden hat on, is not gonna go to Mike Manser and say, I want someone in a bucket truck to go up and cut around those lines. Those people that are gonna go up and cut around those lines or around those streetlights have to be trained.
That's what we need.
So, it's
I'm
not.
not sure Mass General Law would allow, each town must have a tree warden. Dictated
Okay, so
1910, you have to have one. I don't know if you could split what to do, that's a good question, but.
Through the chair.
Mr. Westerling?
Thank you. The former tree warden that we had before he passed was per diem.
Mhm.
So we were paying him for whether he worked an hour or 100 hours during the month. So it would be a similar type thing where we would share the services and we would pay per diem on a monthly basis. So that's a model that the town is familiar with. And I'm happy to put forward through to the town manager's office, even though the budget numbers are already in, some sort of a strategic initiative would show two options. One would be what would it cost to bring on 2 full-time employees with a bucket truck and all the necessary equipment? And what would it cost to budget the services that we put out to private tree companies? What would it look like to have an adequate tree removal budget without adding any full-time employees?
Excuse me if I may, we keep talking about tree removal, but one of the main things that I'm talking about is maintenance. Getting that canopy cut, just like Mr. Tedstone was just talking about, driving down Pleasant Street. If you're in a pickup truck or any large SUV, you've got to drive in the middle of the road, or you hit those trees on the side. You know, going down Elizabeth Road, those trees are about 9 feet. And it's the same thing when there's just a little bit of snow on them, you're doing S-curves all over the place to get around those trees. So I'm just talking about, we keep just talking about tree removal, but there has to be some maintenance over the road so that we can comply with the standards.
I happened to see Mr. Mezek came in. I didn't know. Peter, did you come for this discussion, or is there anything you want to contribute? I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Yeah, I'm sorry I missed it. I did want to be here from the beginning. You know, you guys want to start so early. No.
You sure?
Okay. All right.
So I don't know what you guys have discussed, so I can't.
So, so Pete, Mr. Bolson came up and told us about that you offered to help us out with some land, not donating, but letting us use some land down on Wilson Street. And it's very much appreciated and working with us for the plantings and things like that. So, thank you very much for that generous and gracious offer. And that's basically where we stand there with you. So thanks. We haven't decided on what we're going to do, but you need to know that he did present it. It's awesome. It's not out of character. It's something that we almost expect from you to do is to do stuff like that, and we appreciate it. So thank you.
All right. If there are no further board comments, then what we're asking for the short term is for Mr. Westerling to maybe pull together some budget numbers to have a look at for what some of these added services might cost us. Is that what we've agreed upon?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Expecting that, were you?
Thank you all.
All right. Thank you very
Thank you very
much.
much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. You did a good job considering you were kind of on short notice there. Town managers report. Mr. Kamalo, I believe you're going to address the Trails Coordinating Committee update and anything else.
Yes. In fact, I have a couple points on this item. The first being, Elena and I met with the chairs of the Planning Board, the Conservation Commission. The chair of the Open Space Committee was not able to join us for that meeting. What we gathered from that discussion with the representatives, or with the chairs of the Planning Board and the Conservation Commission, is that they would like to have more time to discuss the draft charge with us. I know the board had given us the deadline of today to present something to the board. Yes, we do have a draft, but I want to share with you that we had a very productive conversation with the chairs of the Planning Board and the Conservation Commission. They pointed out some issues that we would like to discuss further with them. Elaine, I don't recall if we've actually scheduled our follow-up meeting, but they did ask that we schedule a follow-up meeting with them. So my request tonight is if the board could grant us more time to review this with the Planning Board, Conservation Commission, as well as the chair of the Open Space Preservation Commission.
How much time are you looking for?
And what about trails? Why aren't they involved?
This is about trails.
No, why isn't Upper Charles part of that group and maybe the other Friends of the Trails or whatever it is, the other Trails Club?
Yeah, that's not what we had discussed with the board before.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are just give me an idea for what it is they're concerned about that we can't try to continue to move this forward, because we're really good at conversation.
Yeah, I'll give you 4 points. The first being they are interested in discussing and exploring the rule-making authority of the proposed committee.
The rule-making.
Okay, that is not involved now.
No. But again, we are seeking to build a collaborative process. And that's why we are seeking. Yeah.
Who said that? This is our problem with the trails of Hopkinton.
Yeah.
We've been collaborating for 30 years and getting nothing done.
Yeah. Again, remember, Open Space Preservation Committee holds substantial land on which trails are built. Similarly with the Conservation Commission, Planning Board generates a substantial amount of open space that is dedicated to this purpose. That's why we're meeting with those committees.
Okay, those are fair points.
Exactly. Second point.
I didn't get to my butt. Go ahead.
Yeah. The second point, they also wanted to discuss with us opportunities that they see relative to how this advisory committee could build upon some relationship with independently elected boards. This is a dynamic that we run into in town, and now we have an opportunity to discuss that, how that might work upfront before we create a committee. So I think it's an important point of consideration. And then thirdly, they wanted to offer us some suggestions in terms of how we can strengthen the role of this committee as a forum that all discussions pertaining to trails can occur. I think the board in your discussions did identify this proposed entity as the forum through which conversations could occur relating to trails. And now we have 3 committees that are substantial holders of land in town saying they want to give us more suggestions in terms of how we can do that.
But that's what the committee's supposed to figure out.
Right,
not us.
And if I may, you know, we have to be careful that this committee doesn't end up almost reporting to the other 3 before they come up with something. You know, this is something that the Board of Selectmen has been trying to get done for a while, and I think it's fallen into a quagmire right now.
I don't believe so. When we seek input, when we say we are inviting ideas, I find nothing wrong giving adequate time for that to occur. I did not sense, Elaine, feel free to jump in, I did not sense any idea or any intention on the part of those 3 committees to hijack the process. It was a very free-flowing discussion. It was very forward-looking. It was very productive. And last but not least, the other piece that they wanted to discuss is how, in structuring this committee, we can account for the self-interest, realizing how many stakeholders are impacted by this process. So in my mind, those 4 points are enough reason to give us enough time, ample time, to continue this discussion. I'm mindful of what we are saying. This process finally is determined by the selectmen. We're not going to take away from that in our discussions. Again, what I sensed in our conversation was a willingness to share ideas, a willingness to strengthen the charge, and I am suggesting that we not miss that opportunity.
Well, this is really tonight only the second night that we sat down with any kind of a document. So presumably this added input isn't gonna drag on for too long.
It's only the 18 years that I've been around.
No, we talked about getting this umbrella organization together because of various groups that have felt that there was no central contact point and no central planning, so.
But he just described a very non-central discussion with a bunch of
Right.
well-intended people. That is not the issue at all.
No.
But what you just described is just a continuation of what we've been doing in Hopkinton for
And we
the 18 years I've been in.
And we can always modify the charge. We can always modify something. What I'm saying is, let's get this started. We can always modify it. There's no, it can come up as an agenda item, or modify, we can have a public hearing, or modifying the charge of the Trails Committee to meet this need. And this isn't really the second time we've looked at it. We were looking at it a few years ago when I wasn't even in that chair. And last year I was pushing it really hard, and it never made it to the agenda. So we've been talking about it a while.
Mr. Nasrullah?
Yeah, to be fair to Mr. Kamalu and Ms. Wright, this is the second time. We came up with this idea of having a committee. We started out saying we need to deal with the trails. So how are we gonna do it? We tasked Mr. Kamalu with a task to go, figure out how we're gonna do it. And he came up with an idea of a committee 2 meetings ago. We set a deadline, and I wasn't part of this board for the previous 18 years or 15 years, so I don't know what else has gone on, but in this case, I'm thinking that usually institutional knowledge is very helpful, but maybe in this case, it's not, because we have a new committee and we have a direction, and I think what Mr. Kamalu is asking is let that process play out. So getting back to Mr. Tedstone's first question, which is, how much time do you think you need?
I believe mid-January. We'll come back to the board mid-January.
We've only got 2 more meetings to the
With
end
more
of the year,
meetings,
so.
come back to the board.
And then fuse all those comments together into one document that we can
That we
hopefully
will
settle
vote on?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll move on, yeah.
Yeah.
That was supposed to be this one. I bit my tongue on making a motion to adopt what we had at our last meeting.
I was ready to make a motion, and then I backed off because we already set a date of today to have a document in front of us that we could then vote on.
And so I won't go for mid-January. I'll go one more meeting.
One more meeting is next week.
Next week's meeting?
Yes.
Yes. We're not doing every other?
Everything got pushed back because of Veterans Day and Thanksgiving.
We have 2 in December, December 4th, December 18th.
Next meeting is next
Yeah,
week.
it's just that
Yeah.
second half of the month is
Then
coming.
let's do the 18th.
Well, you also don't want to rush, I know you're saying it's been going on forever, but rush it through and vote on something that's not right. What was put forth last meeting, I would not have voted on. It was way too complicated, way too onerous. I think what was distributed this week is better. It more reflects what I saw for a board. Mr. LaGoy, as a matter of fact, I don't think it's been shared with everyone, but he put some thought into it and came up with some ideas and what I thought was a very concise, simplified purpose and goal, which kind of says everything that's in this, but distilled down into something that's a lot more readable and maybe less off-putting than this lengthy thing. So I think there's progress being made. And, just as we wanted this evening to give some input to the Marathon Fund Committee so that they could work their charge, I don't see a problem with getting these other stakeholders if they get on it quickly enough so that we could act on it in another, say, 2 meetings on the 18th. As long as it doesn't drag on forever.
I'd like to make a motion that we give, that we put it off until the 18th and we vote on it on the 18th.
No matter what?
No matter what.
Can you get it done by the 18th, reasonably?
Yes.
Well, it's if those committees can.
There's 3 people. It's this
Yeah.
and chairs.
It's Concom,
But I mean, if
Open space, right?
the board's directive is the board's directive, we'll have to work towards meeting that goal.
I'll second that motion.
I'd like to offer a friendly amendment.
Nice tone of voice, go ahead.
Friendly, sounds friendly.
That we have a goal of the 18th, but if we're not happy with what we're seeing, and more time is required, then that would be a goal, not like a hard deadline. We feel the heat. we definitely feel the heat.
Squishy, squishy.
But I don't see any value in voting on something that's incomplete.
See, I don't see it as incomplete. I see
Maybe
it.
that's not a friendly amendment, it's just commentary.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah,
It's still friendly, though.
I don't see it as incomplete. I see, we have a document, it's, I was in product development for almost 40 years. And in engineering, you can always make it better. Give me 2 more days, I can do this. Give me another week, I can do this. Give me another $30,000 and this, and we can make it even better. But at some point, you have to release the product, or it's already obsolete.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been people screaming to have issues fixed by this committee, and we've been putting it off. It's been the Upper Charles Trails Committee and the running clubs and everybody else have been doing this, and Mike Bolson's been handling all the maintenance and everything, and we keep putting it off and putting it off. At some point, we have to release a document that's good enough. What's General Patton? He says, I'll take a half-baked plan executed violently over a perfect one not executed at all. So, I don't want to be at that point. We've got to, at some point, do something.
I just don't want to, no one's more impatient about this than me, but maybe you.
Okay.
Maybe you are. But I don't want to put undue pressure on our colleagues who've got all kinds of other stuff going on in 2 weeks before the holidays. And then there's other personal commitments and things, and as much as I want this done now, I'm a little concerned that, he's not comfortable with the squeeze on the date. And as much as I like to have fun with him and argue a little bit every now and then, I defer to him on 99% of the stuff. And I'm feeling it sitting next to him that he would rather we do this in January.
Which meeting in January then? Can we do the first meeting in January? I just don't want to put this, because then there'll be a snowstorm, and we're into February, and then it's.
I hear you. Let's see what's the schedule in January. 15th?
Yes, the 15th.
That's exactly what you asked for.
Fine. I'll withdraw my motion.
Thank you.
I will withdraw my second.
Okay.
Now I'll make a motion that we do it on the January 15th, and no matter what, we are going to vote. Up or down, if you want, up or down.
Second.
Comment on the motion?
Well, I'm going to vote against it because I hear what you're saying. I think we've all got the message that we don't want to let this drag on interminably, but it has to be done right, and we have to respect the needs of the other colleagues, and so I would take that as a goal, but I don't think it needs to be a hard, fast motion and vote, but it's been made and seconded.
If the town manager said that that's the time frame that he wants and he can get it done at that, in that timeframe.
Then let's just have that on the agenda. But
So just speaking to the general topic in the motion, I guess, part of this obviously is the composition, that who's gonna be on this committee. And, while I think there's been a lot of, points made over the months and years about different things and how we appoint different people from different committees to represent, maybe this is one of those committees where it shouldn't be as many people from different committees to represent, like planning board and open space and all these others, and it should be more a user type committee and less of, you know, quote, appointed or elected officials doing yet another thing in town. Maybe some more ideas come into this committee as well. So just a thought as you work towards this date, if we vote this date, that maybe that composition might be different this go around than was traditionally been in the past. I personally would like to see newer, trails-oriented, non-elected or appointed types, or more of that and fewer the typical Concom, open space, planning board, selectmen, yada, yada, yada.
Well, I know it's getting late, but we did come prepared to discuss some of this. Could the board give some input now as to what we've seen so far with what's been presented to us tonight? Because I think we thought we were going to take some action tonight. So do members have comments about what's been discussed so far? For instance, to your point, Mr. Herr, about the board composition, I think the new iteration that Mr. Kamalo put out addressed that by saying, not making it a representative of, but one member who is recommended by Parks and Rec. And it says committees recommending members may recommend more than one, blah, 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 but
Yeah, Parks,
there's
Concom, and
some
Planning
good
Board.
stuff in here already.
Yeah.
Can we use the time and give a
four at
little
large.
feedback back now?
And 5 associates.
Yeah,
Well, I just gave mine, so
yeah.
So you have 7 and 5.
Don't we have a motion on the table?
Yes. Yes, we do.
All
We're
right, we have
not
a
talking
motion
to
on the
motion.
table, which has been seconded to require.
So can I make a friendly amendment to this
Yes,
motion?
please, Mr.
I don't think that we can say no matter what, because if it does snow and the meeting is canceled, then we still have to vote no matter what. So let's get the no matter what out of there and go from there.
Okay.
So, can we read what the motion is?
get her done.
Again, respectfully, the board has made its point. I don't think it's necessary to move a motion.
Okay.
The town manager understands the board's directive.
Good.
I'll withdraw my motion again.
I'm
Thank
keeping the second, but I didn't second.
And my
All right.
second.
You got the point. Okay.
But I like the composition, and now that we're doing something else.
So it's gonna be how many voting official members?
5.
No,
Five.
7.
Seven. So
Four-
I would like to
four
see
large.
4 be user groups
4 at large.
and 3 be,
So who else? There's Parks
designees
and,
of
there's
whatever.
Parks and Rec, Concom, and Planning Board already.
And,
That's
and
it.
then among the members at large, the language says, those recommended need not be members. All members shall have a demonstrated interest in the development, management, and use of public trails. So maybe we don't have to necessarily specify that those members be Trails Club, Hall, Scouts, Running Club, but if that's sort of a requirement, it could be made known to those groups when there's a spot available, and you would expect that someone who would apply would have that knowledge.
and that's 4, so that's
4.
that's the majority of the 7. That's
Right,
my interest. And then the other 3 are planning board, conservation commission, and open space.
Recommended by.
Recommended by. It could be
Yes.
one of them or somebody else, but it's
Or
those
not.
3, plus
Correct.
4 at large with those
Yeah,
qualifications.
and there's a possibility after the board has been constituted for a year to name 5 associates if they so desire, who would be non-voting.
That's fine.
Point of clarity, there is no member from Open Space Commission. It's Planning Board, Concom, and Parks and Rec.
Okay.
So,
Should we make that a requirement, and then there's 3 members at large?
Mm-mm. My thing is the user groups need to be the majority of that group.
Yeah.
That committee. That's a different dynamic, and I think that's important.
I agree. The only thought I have on this is that I think the town officials could probably do this, just representing the interests of abutters, abutter rights on the trails.
Well, since the trails are all over the town, it's hard to figure out.
Right, well, that's what I think the town
But I think
officials
everybody, because since trails go by just about everybody's house, we're all almost Abutters.
Yeah.
You're back at your house too,
Yeah.
your house, yeah.
Mr.
Go after
Kumar,
myself.
in fact, just to complement what the board is raising, we did have an extended discussion internally, also together with the representatives of with the chairs of the planning board and the conservation commission, with regard to whether we should actually identify the private groups in the charge. We decided not to identify the private groups in the charge because the town has no control over the mandate of those groups and whether they could continue to exist or not. For example, if a private group disbands and the name is on the charge, it will take a long process to change that. That's why we left the groups unidentified.
Yeah, we ran into that with the Woodville Historical District, where we said we needed a real estate person, and we couldn't find a real estate person, so somebody else came up and they said, well, we have to fill the seat. You know, sometimes they
Okay,
can't
so
find
can we move forward saying that we think the way the board is recommended to be constituted seems to make sense?
Yes.
We're happy with that. Okay, so that's one thing you can work with. I just want to put out, and we can think about it, again, the purpose and the charge. I thought they were all very good items, but it's very long and very complex. And I just wanted to read, and maybe we can think about this for next time, what Mr. Lugoy had sent. He boiled down the purpose and the goals into a couple of very succinct statements. Purpose.
If I may, sorry.
Could I, yeah?
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yep.
We have an email from Peter from today.
Okay.
Subsequent to what he sent.
Yeah.
And the email is very brief. I've looked over the most recent committee charge in the BOS packet, and I think it looks pretty good.
Mhm.
Still would suggest making sure folks currently working on and using trails are well represented on the committee, but the two options are not mutually exclusive.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think we just covered that with composition, so.
Right.
that-
And
that's
yeah.
good.
So I don't see this as a half-baked document at all. You know, when you were just,
No.
when you were saying, you know, earlier, that, you know, we beat this up at our last meeting.
But where it's
Right.
coming from is.
Right,
others that
okay, yeah,
want-
exactly, yeah, so.
In the enforcement thing that I think some people have suggested they wanna kick around, or well, maybe enforcement's the word, but the regulation piece of this that should come out. We have to be careful with that. We cannot dilute that a whole lot, because one of the problems we have right now is there is no central authority. So we need, this committee has to create, this charge has to create a central authority with an appeal process, which would come to the Board of Selectmen. And I'm not sure what else you need to sort out with whomever, but sort it out. But I don't see how you cannot dilute the central authority of this committee, or we're wasting our time.
And that's where I was getting to with this meeting. I wanna make sure that they're not snipped with any of that authority by these other committees.
In fact, in our discussions, there was a suggestion that perhaps we should look at mimicking the structure of the Lake Maspenock Weed Advisory Committee. As you recall, at town meeting, the suggestion was that that committee should report to some official, professional, versus having the committee report to the Board of Selectmen.
And it ended up staying with the Board of Selectmen, didn't it?
No, town meeting advisor did report to the Director of Public Works.
For that $60,000.
Yeah, that was only.
And going forward.
Yeah, but I don't think that's the same scenario as what we're talking about here.
Isn't this all stuff you can get hashed out for the next meeting?
Right,
What do we-
because
what do we
because
talk
that's,
about now?
that cut
Be here till
them,
midnight.
that took away their authority,
Just
just the opposite.
to offer feedback for what you're gonna work on between now and mid-January. If it comes back highly diluted, and there's no central authority of this committee that we're forming, of all these volunteers that are well-informed, and the appeal to the Board of Selectmen, then I would have a strong issue with the document,
Okay.
as one member.
I want
I
to just
agree.
comment to Mr. Herr. You're talking about things not being diluted and having authority, and yet when I read through the way this is written, the words that came out to me were make recommendations, advise, participate, recommendation, recommend, encourage, coordinate. I don't see real strong action words there. It seems much more.
For the subcommittee, for the Trails
This was
Committee.
the Trails Committee.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to have, I mean, I wanted to see something in here that actually talked about somehow coordinating the actual construction of the trail. Like if they look at the whole picture and say, this is a key point that really needs it, that they, you know, direct the various entities to get that done. But I don't see a lot of action.
I saw it as like the marathon committee.
Exactly.
The marathon committee, they vet everything out, and then they bring us the hockey bags,
Right.
the shirts,
Right.
and the porta potties, and it's like, okay.
This is the way I kind of envisioned it being, but Mr. Herr, you seem to be looking for something that's has a lot more power behind it.
I'm not sure about the power so much as centrally focused. That's what I'm looking for. So what I would like to see, because this is what's been missing in my view over the years, is we've got 4 or 5 entities all trying to do the right thing, but having a hard time kind of coordinating. This central authority, this central group, pull it all together and figure it all out as best they can. And the key decisions are still going to come to the Board of Selectmen because it's going to be land issues and
But really only the dollar issues need
Right,
to come to the
right.
Board of Selectmen.
So that's kind of my thinking. If
Everything else they can handle.
those words, I hear what you're saying and pointing out those words, so maybe some of those words are recommend, some of those words are they shall, you know?
Okay.
Can I share with the board just the wording that Mr. LaGoy came up with? Because I thought it was very concise and it was, spoke to what I envisioned this committee being. The wording was for the purpose being, 1, advise and provide recommendation to the Board of Selectmen on matters concerning the design, development, and maintenance of the town's trail system. 2, promote a cohesive vision for the development, preservation, management, and sustainability of the town's trail network to serve the residents of the community. And 3, serve as a point of contact for all town trail-related issues for town residents and other town committees and groups. And the goals were summarized as, the overall goal of the Trails Committee would be to recommend to the selectmen and work to develop and maintain a connected, well-coordinated system of trails to serve the residents of the community, linking neighborhoods, schools, town conservation land, recreation land, and open space, and providing connections with regional trail systems and open space in neighboring communities. We might look at that going forward. I just thought that was very concise and, in my view, summed up a lot more succinctly than this.
And I think in that, where you read the charge, I think the 3rd point, if you could add the word some, or at least the idea that we just talked about, and the first line of decision-making, or the first, or the initial decision-making body. Something along those, something like that, you know what I mean? So in other words, the committee's being put in place, and it has responsibility, and it has authority. There's nothing more frustrating than being appointed to something and having no authority to get anything done, right? We all do that at work sometimes, and in other entities too, including local government. So let's make sure the committee has authority, the first line of authority, or however you word that.
Yeah, we'll
Primary responsibility.
Primary responsibility, initial responsibility.
Initial
There you go, something like that.
responsibility.
Whatever it is.
Okay.
To maybe pull that word, initial responsibility to decide as opposed to recommend.
Yeah.
Determine.
And determine whatever, yeah.
Okay.
You know, until it involves money.
Right.
Well, land acquisition. Well,
That's
it's
money.
Okay, that's money.
You know, because we give them a budget for trail maintenance and everything else, you know, they're not gonna come to us, okay, we have $100,000 to spend. You know, it's like, can we spend 10,000 on this? No, they've already got 100,000 to spend, and make sure they use it correctly. We have to leave it up to them to, just like the Marathon Fund Committee, they have X amount of dollars. They vet out the recommendation, the stuff that comes in, the requests, and then they make recommendations for us to sign the checks.
Okay, that's good progress. Other comments, any input, Mr. Marlowe? Anybody else? That's some guidance. We've made some progress.
Yeah, we've made good progress. I think we have a clear deadline.
You think?
Yeah, we also identified, I think, a couple of things that also line up with what we're discussing with the chairs of the
Good.
Planning Board and the Conservation Commission, and we'll act on the board's recommendations.
Okay, all right, good for now? All right. Great, well, thank you for sticking with us and at least going over a little bit of this, so you have something out of this meeting. Is there anything more with town manager's report? That was all, just the trails?
Yes, just the trails.
Just the trails.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, almost done. Liaison reports, board invites. Does anybody have any liaison updates or reports to share?
I have nothing.
The only thing I'd like to, I don't know if I would mention it here, is the holiday stroll, I believe is this weekend. And it would be nice to see the town come out and see Santa go by on the old antique fire truck and support some of our local businesses.
Great.
Skip me for 1 second.
I don't have any official liaison reports, but similar to Mr. Tedstone, this is this week the celebration of Diwali for a lot of our Indian neighbors, and I actually met with a group that's trying to form an organization called the South Asian Circle of Friends of Hopkinton, and they're going to be hosting a Diwali party on December 1st for both Hopkinton and Holliston at the Holliston Town Hall.
Cool.
So it'd be great if we could support them.
No, I have one that's, I'm on the zoning advisory committee again, and this isn't, it's not a liaison or anything, but what came up from Mike Shepherd was they want to put some guidelines for mobile vendors and
Food trucks?
Food truck kind of a thing, and well, it was looked at zoning as a more of a general bylaw. It would have to be, and general bylaws have to come from the Board of Selectmen. And so I just figured I'd mention that is something that I won't be going through the planning board, but that's something they wanted us to take a look at.
Do those food trucks go through, like, Board of Health?
Yes.
They have, so in order to come into town, an ice cream truck?
Yeah. And then there was another one where hours of business operation, but they were going, and I thought that was also, came through the Board of Selectmen, but they're looking to do it through different zones, so it may not be through the Board of Selectmen. That's it.
And last but not least, for the exciting committee that I'm both liaison to and chairman of, I will report on Cemetery Commission that actually this is a first in public records availability, the completion of a long-standing CPC project. We have now got all of the town's cemetery records up, available to the public online, which means genealogy is huge. Anybody in any part of the country who's trying to do research on family member can get onto our website and go, it's available either through eGov or through the Cemetery Commission website, and get into all the town's records. So any kind of family history research, genealogy research, very few towns have these records now available online, but Hopkinton is a first, so they're all up there. If you genealogy researchers out there want some help, the Cemetery Commission and the Historical Society get a lot of requests trying to find information on family members, and heretofore someone has had to take the time to do the digging to try to go through all kinds of records, and it's up there now online for everybody to do their own family research. So it's a nice benefit for the community. So with that, are there any future agenda items that anyone would like to ask for?
I think I'm good.
You good? You've made enough trouble tonight, John.
I'm all set, thank you.
All right, hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Signing
moved.
anything?
Second.
Second, all those in favor, please say
Listen.
aye.
Aye.
Opposed, unanimous. Thank you, everybody.
Good
Thank you,
night. We have anything
HCAM,
to
one
sign?
more time.
Thank you.
Ellen, do you have anything to say?